Good, af- Good afternoon. I'm Molly Young from the Miami University Alumni Association. Welcome to you, and thank you all for joining us for this first episode of the College of Engineering and Computing's Women's Advisory Committee Speaker Series. We are thrilled to get right into our first conversation with Systems Analysis alumna Denise Taylor, who will be chatting it up with current mechanical engineering student Zainab Sumahoro. If
Yes.
the viewers have questions, you can ask them during the webinar by clicking the Ask a Question button underneath your video. And with that quick, brief introduction, I'm going to turn it right over to Denise and Zainab to kick us off. Welcome to you both. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Zainab, this is you, girl.
Okay. I will go ahead and introduce myself. So, as Molly mentioned, my name is Zainab Sumahoro. I am a fourth-year mechanical engineering student. I am I'm involved in a lot of things. I'm part of National Society of Black Engineers. I'm currently the lead building manager in Armstrong Student Center, and I also work in a career center as a career assistant. I'm also a Bridges Scholar and an Access Fellow Scholar as well, and many other things. And also a newest member of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will jump in here and introduce myself. And it's an honor to be interviewed by such a fabulous young lady. My name is Denise Taylor. I graduated Miami University's Systems Analysis department at the time in 1992. Since then, I have had the opportunity to have an amazing career, garner some amazing experiences, work for some fantastic companies across multiple industries. When I left Miami University, I went right into a full-time position with Eli Lilly and Company in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then I got married and moved to Illinois, and I began working with Caterpillar at the time. My husband made a transition in employment that relocated us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I started working for a company called Harnish Fager Corporation, and later began working at Kohl's Department Stores, where I worked for a very long time. I often say that I had a diverse career at one company because I had the opportunity to do so many different things. Shortly after, I reached my 15th year with Kohl's, I decided that I wanted to move to warmer climate, and we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I continued in the retail space, working for Belk Department Stores, which is a more Southeastern brand. And then I left there and went to a building materials company and a auto tire industry. And I just had a great career, but now I am a full-time entrepreneur. I get a chance to do some amazing work, which I'm sure we'll jump in today. So this interview is so special because it's a blend of old and new, if I could call it that. We're talking to a rising star, and this is an incredible opportunity for me. So thank you, and I welcome this experience with you today.
Yes. Thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me interview you. Really appreciate it. Before we even get into your career life, I want to talk about your experience at Miami University and why did you originally chose to attend Miami University?
Well, I probably have an uncharted story in that case because growing up, I wasn't a scholar student, if I could say it that way. In fact, coming into Miami, I was brought in through what was called the President's Enrichment Program at the time, which was really an attempt to have more diverse students come in from urban environments and really position them with support to be able to make it through. So my acceptance to Miami was a probationary acceptance into the university. And the one good thing about the President's Enrichment Program was it was an opportunity to help give me everything that I was missing. It helped me have support around me to fortify my experience. It helped me to have people involved to help me navigate the whole college experience, which was kind of foreign to me. I grew up in a family where my parents graduated high school. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My older brothers did not graduate high school. And so I was kind of the first. And so my experience coming into Miami was really an opportunity of a lifetime. I really call it a defining moment. I talk a lot about the experience in my second book. But fast forward, I had an incredible experience at Miami. Talk about eye-opening. When I got there, I didn't know what a prerequisite was. I didn't know what the college of this or that was. I didn't know what a residence hall was. Like, everything was completely foreign to me just because I didn't have any of that exposure. But what I did have and found within myself was the desire to seize opportunities. And that was a huge opportunity for me. And I took full advantage of everything Miami. So I had work study programs. So I worked in the Department of Speech Pathology and Audiology. At the time, it was the School of Applied Science. I worked in the systems analysis office. I was there supporting the secretaries. Their name was Debbie and Sally, Debbie Keebler and Sally Wolf. They were the secretaries in the office, and I was there supporting them. That afforded me the opportunity to know each and every one of the professors outside of the classroom because I worked with them. And it also afforded me the opportunity to get to know Dean Haddad, who was the dean at the time, relatively closely. So I would say I just seized the opportunity. And by the time I left Miami, I may have gotten there on a probationary basis, but I graduated earning the university's President's Distinguished Student Award. And so I guess my experience at Miami was incredible because it took someone who really was completely out of their element, who didn't have a necessarily strong educational background, but was given a lifeline opportunity to come in and be supported there. And I would say I completely seized the moment. I took full advantage of the opportunity, and I made some great achievements with my experience and time.
I really love that you said that you seized opportunity, because I was a summer undergrad orientation leader. And one of the things I've always told the first year students was to always seize opportunity and always go for it, because Miami really has a lot of opportunities for people. It's just up for you to go out and look for those opportunities. So definitely it reiterates how Miami has these opportunities for people and for the students just to go after them. So I really love that you said that, because oh my gosh, that's what I always say. That's what I always tell people. So speaking of that, I really want, but I feel like for me, it took me a while to go after those opportunities because I'm very introverted and shy. So what exactly would you give advice to a person that's that wants to do it, but is a little too afraid, or feel like they can't really, they don't believe in themselves enough, or just overall just lack the confidence to do so because they just don't believe in themselves?
So that's a great question, because believe it or not, I am quite introverted myself. So I refuel. Introversion doesn't mean you don't have the ability to show up in the moment. It just is about what your preference is and how you refuel yourself. And so my best advice, I'll give a few tips on how I function. The first thing I do, especially if I know I have to enter into a networking experience, is I prepare myself for that, meaning that I make sure that I get my mindset right and that I know what I'm going in, that I have the proper energy and perspective to show up. If we don't prepare ourselves, and we know we have that tendency to be the wallflower, that is when you feel overwhelmed in the moment. So I'm real deliberate about my calendar and making sure I know what's coming up so that I can properly prepare from an energy perspective to be present and available. The second thing I do is I make a commitment to myself to at least talk to X number of people. I tend to be one of those people who would just go and sit and I could just observe everything and not really engage. But before I go in, I make an intention to say I'm going to talk to this many people. So I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. In December, I went to a holiday gathering, right? And I have a podcast. And so I have information. I have cards for my podcast. And I love talking about my podcast, which is an easy talking point. That's my third thing, but I'll get there. Before I got there, I made the intention with myself that I would give out 5 cards, which meant that I had to intentionally introduce, make connection with 5 people. And so I just set my intentions ahead of time of this is the number of people I will engage with. Was I going to talk to everybody in the room? No, that just wasn't going to happen. But I was willing to allow myself to talk to 5 people. And I will tell you, it grew to 5. It used to be 2. The next thing is just figure out what your key talking point is, right? And make sure you lean into that and make sure you prepare to talk about that. So like I was saying, I have a podcast and I talk about it. So I know exactly how I want to share about it. I know exactly what my thoughts are. And that has been helpful. So I have other tips, but those 3 kind of make a difference. I get my energy right before I go, set my perspective. I'm real deliberate and intentional about how I want to show up when I'm there. And I make a commitment to myself to do that. And then I'm very clear on my talking points and what I feel comfortable discussing. So that's how I approach those types of scenarios. But I will tell you this. I was listening to a different podcast, and one of the benefits of being a wallflower, if you will, is that you get to take it all in. You get to observe. You get to be very aware of what's happening there. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about people who have more bias for being introverted is that they're disconnected. And that is not a good assumption. Anytime I'm anywhere, I can tell you everything that's going on because I pay attention to it all, even though I may not be engaging with it. And so I think that that's one of the stereotypes that is a bit of a misnomer for people who just have a tendency to be more to themselves.
Okay. Those are some good tips. I was mentally taking the notes because I was speaking about myself. But yeah, thank you for that. I do have a couple more questions about your young professional life. What are some lessons you have learned as you develop personally and professionally as you continue to grow as a person?
Yeah. So one of the things that I would say is probably the biggest lesson that I wish I would have really lobbed on to sooner. A lot of my experience, a lot of the ways that I grew up, and then culturally as well, we have this perspective of you got to figure it out on your own. You got to make it happen on your own. You got to, not really let anybody know what's going on, power through on your own, right? That's the bias. But what I have come to realize and appreciate even more is the power of relationships. And even though it may not be something you grew up with, even though it may not be something that was emulated before you in terms of family and other people in your lives. And even though it might not be something that people have taught or trained you to, you were created for relationship. We are created as relational beings. And so I wish that I would have embraced that more. Not that I wanted to be a part of every circle, but I do think that there are some intentional relationships that we can have in our lives that will help us both personally and professionally. I always have this 4 relationship model. I believe that we should have a role model. And even though our role model may not be someone that we can interact with, sit across the table with, but they kind of serve as this muse, if you will, someone's that is being, doing, having, achieving what you desire. And you can look to them and be inspired. You can be encouraged and you can be empowered. We need to be able to identify the role models. And I will tell you that I have role models, and it's not necessarily that their complete life is a representation of what I want, but there are aspects of their success that is a representation that I want. And so you hone into those people in a way that's meaningful to you. The second relationship that I think is really important is a mentor. A mentor is someone who is willing to help you navigate, willing to help you lean into their experience, into their wisdom, willing to allow you to bring them to the table, into the things that you are trying to decipher or figure out or reason through. You need someone who can infuse your success journey with that. The third relationship that I think is key is a partner. You need a colleague. You need someone who is in the game with you, not necessarily a coworker from the same sense of we're working on the same type of work, but someone who is passionate and driven in the same way as you, because iron sharpens iron. So you want to have somebody that you can reach out to and know that you're on the same vein with them and you guys can encourage one another. Before I jumped on this call, I was talking with another girl who's an entrepreneur who was trying to figure out something. That is a partner, because I was able to jump on and help her navigate through that really quickly. The last relationship that I think is key is a friend. You got to have somebody to have fun with. You got to have somebody to just be able to be yourself with. And there are other relationships that they'll tell you in the professional circuit, like a sponsor, somebody who's out there advocating for you and opening doors. But in terms of life and career, I think those 4 types of relationships. And I will tell you, there are some people who can be more than one of them to you, but you probably won't find somebody who is the full package, like they're your role model and your mentor and your partner and your friend. Don't be afraid to have as many relationships as necessary for whatever purpose. In my life, I have a life coach. I have a mentor. I have a business coach. So I forge relationships with a specific context to be able to help me navigate. And so I think that that's one of the things that I wish I would have leaned into a little bit more sooner than later, is the power of relationship.
Wow, that was a really good answer. Definitely, I relate a lot to like the mentor, because I have a mentor in mind. I just haven't had the time or the courage to ask her yet. So that's something definitely I'm planning on doing for myself. I wanted to ask you, because we're going to go into like your career life and what you do now a little bit. I wanted to ask you, how would you define like leadership or being a leader in your like own words? What are some ways like you embody being a leader? And
so one of the most effective ways that I have found of how I like to show up as being a leader and what works for me is this whole perspective of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I have been afforded the privilege of managing a great deal of people, even onshore and offshore. I've had teams that have been hundreds of people. And what I always kept first and foremost is care for the person. I was the person that would know that your dog was sick, or that your family member was ill, or that you had some plans for the weekend, because I wanted you to genuinely know I cared about you as a person. Yes, there are things we are trying to accomplish and do, but if I care for you as a person, then you are going to excel in the work that you are working to achieve. One of the things that I can honestly say comes as a strong byproduct when you function in that way is people will go all out for you. They will work hard for you. They will be attached to you. They will think highly of you, and they will value the relationship with you. And so it just becomes whether you become good at managing people or managing work. And I have found that if you are really focused on managing people and helping them to bring the best out of their skill set, helping them to pursue the things that they desire, they will master the work, and they will show up very strong for you in the context of work. The next thing that I think is really key as a leader is to leave meat on the bone for the people who are doing the work, right? Oftentimes, leaders are so passionate about what they want to get accomplished that they will overstep the person being able to grow in the development of the work that they have been assigned. I have never been a micromanager. In fact, my philosophy is if I've got to do the work and you are assigned the work, then one of us is unnecessary. You have to be trustworthy that whatever you're giving to people to be able to do, that they can grow in it and they can deliver it if you will support them as a person. And so I just don't really do well with micromanaging, and I have never been a micromanager. But I will say this, I only go deep into that perspective of helping them manage their work if I see a problem, if we're not meeting some deliveries or we're not achieving some goals. But I don't step in to do it. I step in to coach through it. Mm-hmm. And I think that those have been an effective approach to leadership. The one thing that leadership is relied upon is to be able to set the stage for where we are going and what it is we're trying to accomplish. And as a leader, we should be thinking about that more than how we can manage the day in and day out of work. So those are just a few of my thoughts on leadership.
Okay, yeah. I do personally believe leadership obviously did come with some challenges with being like a leader. And I wanted, especially as a Black woman, and I wanted to know how as a Black woman should we take on leadership roles? Because sometimes I feel like I could become really intimidated, and then now I'm doubting my skills and not trusting my abilities. And I know personally, I know I'm capable of doing the job. Otherwise, I would never been assigned myself to do the job. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways to as a Black woman to help us understand where we're at and what the leadership that we're meant to be there?
Mm-hmm. So here's what I will tell you as a story, and then I'll go deeper on the context that you entered. So my oldest daughter works in technology as well. Mm-hmm. She recently accepted a position with Nike. She works in cybersecurity for Nike. And when she came to me, as it was approaching the time for her to graduate high school, and she told me that she wanted to go into a technology field, I knew her skill sets well enough to know that it was a good fit. But guess what? I tried to talk her out of it. Mm-hmm. I tried to talk her out of it because I really believed that if I could, it wasn't something she was committed to. And I didn't want her to do it just because I had a technical background. There was another reason why I did that, is because I felt like I wanted to help her be prepared for what she was walking into as a Black woman in a technology field. One of the things that's true, it was really true for me back in 1992 when I graduated, and it's still true for you as you will graduate in 2024. We don't have a dominant presence as Black women. We don't have a dominant presence as women, period. So what you have to begin to brace yourself for is that it will likely be only you in the room. And how do you deal with that? One of the things that I really lean into is you beginning to understand who you are and what you can appreciate about yourself. The unfortunate perspective is a lot of us take our personal definition from what happened to us. We take our personal definition from how society views us. Personally, I take my definition from what God says about me. There are a lot of great, incredible things that he says about me that helps me to know that I am good. And I bring all of that goodness to the table every time I show up, regardless of someone else's view or perspective of me. So what I would say to you as a person who just happens to be a very strong, young Black woman is I want you to show up in the fullness of who you are always. We have a tendency to respond to that friction, to respond to the resistance that we face by shrinking. And that is something that will be a discredit to us rather than everything we have to bring to the table. And so what I want you to war against is the limiting thinking. I want you to war against the imposter syndrome. I want you to war against the definitions that don't align with who you are and who you believe your creator has made you to be. Because the opinions of other people is really not any of our business. That's their opinions. But every gift and talent you have been blessed with and everything that you have been assigned to accomplish is your business. And I want you to show up fully in that. And so my words of wisdom to you would be to deepen your resolve in your faith, deepen your resolve in who you are, deepen your resolve in what you're capable of doing, because you're going to meet opposition, you're going to meet resistance, but none of that is a definition or byproduct of who you really are. Now, I will tell you, I'm 52 years old and it took me a long time to get here, right? So I've been through some experiences. I've been through the rolling of eyes. I've been through what would be prejudice. I've been through a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, the advice I just gave you is what I wish someone would have told me when I sat in your seat, which is to continue to feed yourself on a daily basis everything that makes you feel strong, everything that makes you feel confident. That is what you feed yourself and you remind yourself of daily so that you can show up and knock it out the park.
You mentioned imposter syndrome, and I wanted to ask you, do you believe that it's fake? As in, because I'm reading a book, and one of the ladies, she came and said, like, it's just, she's mentioned how it was created basically to make excuses for people to not actually do what they know that they're capable of. And I was like, that's interesting, because I thought I was like suffering from imposter syndrome. But whenever I talk to other people about it, they mention like, oh, it's not really a real thing. You just have to overcome it. And I'm like, how am I overcoming something that's fake? So I wanted to know like your opinion and your take on that imposter syndrome.
Well, I think imposter syndrome is just more of a term that has been applied to what you feel, right? And so the reality is, whether or not people believe it's fake or not, let me just ask you a question. How do you feel? Do you feel occasionally that you're not good enough? Do you feel occasionally that your value is not strong? Do you feel occasionally that you can't show up to match what other people do? Imposter syndrome is just a pattern, a thought pattern that reoccurs in your mind that makes you begin to shrink, even though you're well able, you're well educated, you know what you're doing. There's this notion of defeating thoughts that come in, and for some people, it paralyzes them. It stops them from moving forward. It stops them from leaning into their gifts, talents, and abilities. So I'm not really here to debate whether or not it's legit or not legit. I would ask person by person what's standing in your way. Right. And as I continue to help women build a life that they love, that's what I do professionally now. What I have found is many of us have barriers that are there. Either we have thoughts of ourselves not being enough. We have trauma in our past, which we're kind of tethered to, that's keeping our range of motion from where we want it to be. We have some inadequacy perspectives where we don't think our talents and gifts are good enough to bring to the table. They just gave that a label of imposter syndrome that says, I really am, but for some reason, I think I'm not. That's all imposter syndrome is as a definition. And I will tell you that I've had those times. I've had those moments where I didn't feel like I was good enough. The issue is, are you going to let that stop you? And that is where the people who are saying to you, you just got to work through it. You just got to get past it. For some people, it is just that. It is just a decision. It is just a choice. But for a lot of people, depending on the root of what's driving that thought, it's more than a girl, you better just go through with it. It's more than just that kind of pushing. It takes a lot of work to do it. And so I've seen people be really stricken by it. I've seen people hold back because of it. And you can work through it with repeated reminders of who you are, but I'm not so sure that I would agree it's not real.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. That's how I felt too. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and like go a different route. We're gonna talk about entrepreneurship and like what exactly inspired you to become an entrepreneur. Was it a step that you was afraid to take? Was it a struggle at first and then it became something, or you just off the bat? So like, yeah.
So becoming an entrepreneur was an interesting journey for me because I ran from it like the plague. Like I really didn't want to do it at all. Right.
Yeah.
I will say my family roots are pretty steep when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so if there is a perspective of something being in your DNA, I would definitely say that is something that is a lineage for us, right, of entrepreneurism. But for me, I got to the point where I really felt like it was a divine nudge to go in that direction. I had surgery in the fall of 2019, and I was home on medical leave recovering. And it was as if I was in a silence camp because I'm not a big TV watcher, and our daughters were away at college and my husband was working long hours. And so I just found myself here almost in just complete silence most of the time. And it was in that stillness that I began to sense a shift in my appetite for success. And I heard very clearly something that I believe is a calling or a mission for my life, which is I need you to transcend success and be significant. And for me, significance is about serving others. And so I always like to describe it in my case that my appetite for success changed. I know how to sell a lot of stuff online. I've done that for years. I was very early in the game when it came to e-commerce. At Kohl's, I was involved with the website when it was in the 90s doing billions online in the 90s. And that was really early in terms of online business. And so I know how to make the performance reports. I know how to do all of the KPIs. I know how to do all of that. I know how to sell tees, tanks, shorts, tires, building material. I know how to sell all of that online because I've done it, right? Working for different companies in industry. But what I found when I went back to work after my medical leave is that just wasn't doing it for me anymore, right? My sense of fulfillment and my sense of satisfaction has changed. And that is what kind of started me on my journey to serve in the way that I do and to show up in the way that I do, really being an advocate for women to stop shrinking, to stop hiding, to stop secretly wanting things and to give themselves the grace and opportunity to lean into what their desires are and what they want. So for me, I kind of came at this a different way because it wasn't always necessarily this burning passion of wanting to be in business for myself. But I have some really good corporate experiences that make me very valuable in the role that I play now, helping women to navigate certain circumstances and build confidence and being able to make, decisioning and choices and all of that good stuff, as well as leading teams. But I wouldn't say I had this diehard passion to become an entrepreneur. In fact, if I could just interject opinion, and this is just definitely opinion, it has been painted as if it's the holy grail, like everybody needs to be their own boss. But the reality is there is a lot of responsibilities that come with being a boss. And I don't know that I would say everyone is suited for it. And I don't think everybody is designed to chase their own dreams. But I do think that if you have that passion and you have that desire, or you're being led in that way, similar to me, you should give yourself the opportunity to experience that version of yourself.
Yeah, I'm also the same. I always tell people, like, I'm never going to own a business. We'll see how that turns out. Because
I said never to.
Yeah. Because I just had no desire and no passion towards it. But who knows? Maybe in the future that may change. Yeah. You do have a business called Next Level Consulting. And I want to, if you don't mind, giving us like exactly what do you do with that business? How what exactly is it? Because I'm not too sure.
Next Level Business Consulting is actually a firm where my team the way that they support me, we support other people. So what I mean by that, I write, I have 2 podcasts, I have a pretty solid social media presence, I manage email, I do a lot of things that help drive my business, my mentorship business, my podcast business. Mm-hmm. And so all of the service that we do for me, we do for other people. So my firm does email marketing. We do social media management. We help produce and launch podcasts for other people. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what the firm does. We do a lot of branding work too, where we'll come in and help do brand definition and help run photo shoots and the creative elements. We'll do some website development, but I will only do that for branding clients. Mm-hmm. And so it's a firm that kind of helps with building business for other entrepreneurs. And I am the biggest client of my firm.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So then you also have 2 books that you wrote. Mm-hmm. I Am the Good Thing and Embrace Your Power and Go. And I wanted to know what exactly drove and inspired you to write these 2 books.
Mm-hmm. So the books are really the reading half, if I could say that, of the podcast. So mm-hmm. I have 2 podcasts. The first podcast is Embrace Your Power. Mm-hmm. I launched Embrace Your Power in April of 2021. I am really excited because we are coming up on the 100th episode for Embrace Your Power. And it's been 100 weeks of consecutively showing up and really being able to pour out content that helps people to be encouraged to go after their dreams and do the things that they desire. Back in November, I launched my second podcast, which is I'm the Good Thing. And so that as a perspective is really what's aligned to support my overall mission. So what I shared with you is I help women build a life that they love. And for me, there's 2 halves to that. We have to begin to know and believe who we are, and we have to believe in what we can do. And so I'm the Good Thing, both the book and the podcast is centered around mindset. What are the life lessons? What's the wisdom that we can take in so that we can begin to improve our thoughts about ourselves, improve our thoughts about how we navigate and make choices and decisions. So when I launched that podcast, I wanted to do a different format. So it's 5-minute episodes. They release 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. The book that I wrote for I'm the Good Thing is really a 30-day journey of improving relationships. And in that particular context, it's around love relationships. Because when I first started showing up, I showed up really talking about how to hang in there with love and navigate with love in relationship. But I will tell you, as I served more and more, I really began to understand that we have to grow personally in order to soar relationally. And so I broadened the context of I'm the Good Thing to be more holistic about who we are as a person, not just in the context of relationship. Embrace Your Power and Go is about being, doing, having, and achieving what we want. It's another 30-day journal, which really takes you through how do you get out of the starting blocks and get past some of those barriers that are prohibiting you on your journey. So the books kind of go along with the podcast. But I will say I'm the Good Thing in terms of a book was really more about relationship than it was the broad context of you, where the podcast is more about you as a holistic person, not just that one aspect.
Okay. I love listening to podcasts, and I did listen to like one of the episodes. That's why I work out. So this is really nice episodes. I feel very like empowering, and like, okay, well, let me try to do something for me or something like that. So I also, so I went to a National Society of Black Engineer conference last spring, and there was a lecture or a panel of Black women talking about how Black women are constantly apologizing, even though we don't have to apologize. You have a quote that says, "My goal is to help you build a life of love without apology." So I wanted to know why do you think Black women are constantly always being like apologizing? And honestly, like, how do we become more of our unapologetic selves, just living our life without having to apologize all the time?
I love that. How do we become more unapologetic? So, as a definition or context, because there's some cultural bias to that term, right? Unapologetic doesn't mean that we don't feel or that we don't have a sense of empathy. That's not what that is about. Being unapologetic just means that you are making a very definitive choice for yourself. And I think that that is rooted in the fact that we often are givers. We often deprioritize ourselves. We often give way and space to other people, even if it's our turn, if it's our right. And so this whole notion of becoming more unapologetic is really centered around prioritizing yourself and not really feeling like you have to justify that positioning, that choice. And so I guess when I talk about building a life that you love with no apologies, it's this whole notion and perspective that we often make everything and everyone else more important. Mm-hmm. What I have found in working with women is we talk like we're in our top 5, but when you look at our actions, they don't show like we're in our top 5. We don't value ourselves. We don't prioritize ourselves. And unfortunately, because we have had a bias to step back, to play small, to not lean in, to not make waves, to not, be disruptive, we have created this overarching perspective that that's okay. And I think when you hear that whole mantra or perspective of being unapologetic or stop making apologies, it's just trying to bolster the confidence to be able to prioritize you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I feel like this is my first time in like my whole college career where I actually prioritize the stuff that I wanted to do. And it's been quite an experience / journey for myself. Hence why I joined a dance team. Even though I wanted to do it for a while, but I haven't because I was just so focused on other things. Same as me joining my sorority. It's something I always wanted to do, but I never made time to do it. So definitely as I become more of an adult woman than I am now, I learned to prioritize myself and stuff of the sort. I started journaling, but that's something else.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. My daughter, in order to change some of her behaviors, she had the year of just say it. Because what she found is she had thoughts and she had opinions and she had perspectives, but she would not just say it. She would just keep swallowing those words. And so all of 2021, she designated that the year of just say it, like she was just going to speak her mind. And what I think is beautiful is she talked about her friends knew that that was her intention and encouraged her in it. So when they started to see her say, never mind, they were like, no, just say it. And I think that goes back to those relationships that we talked about and who's around you, who knows what it is that you're working on, who can encourage you in that. And so in that same vein, it's just another way of prioritizing what it is you want.
Yeah, definitely. And my friends are the same. They're like, Dina, you can do it. You just have to go do it. And I'm like, I guess. So I do have one more question. What advice would you give to a young Black woman who's still trying to find her place in the world, who's still going on this journal, i.e. me? So what exactly, what are some steps you suggest that they take, or just some general advice just to get them going?
Okay. Well, I have 5 steps and I'll walk through those in just a second, but I'm going to start off with the one that I feel in my heart. In my heart, I would just tell you, don't lose your voice. Don't give up your voice. It's powerful. It's life-giving. It's necessary. It's valuable. So don't lose your voice. Keep speaking up. Keep presenting yourself. Keep saying your thoughts. Keep honoring yourself, so don't lose your voice. But in terms of success, I have what I call the 5 success superpowers, and I'll run through them really quick. These came as a byproduct of me looking back in reflection and saying, as I saw different things and different experiences that I wanted to have, what did I see as a pattern that I started to apply to them? And the first was to see myself successful. I had to really begin to envision myself doing what I wanted to do, having what I wanted to have, being who I wanted to be, and achieving what I wanted to achieve. I love this whole notion of perspective, of visit your future self on the canvas of your imagination and paint the picture for yourself of who it is you want to be and what it is you want to do. Mm-hmm. Now, when we do that, we have a tendency to get afraid because we're not sure how it's going to happen. But I want you to pull back from that. And instead of trying to reason through it, I just want you to dream about yourself as big as you can dream it, with no limits. Just in your mind, think of what it is that you want to be. The second perspective is shake off fear. And it's very intentionally number 2, because as you start thinking real big, you're like, I can't do that, or that seems out of reach. And before I want you to cut it down, I want you to really deal with the fears that are coming up. Why do you think you can't do it? Why are you thinking of failure? Why are you thinking you're not good enough? Like, what are these fears? Why do you think it's too much? Where did these thoughts come from? And how do we begin to eradicate that? The one biggest way that you eradicate fears, you lean into truth. What is the truth about you? And how does that go against the fear that you've been led to believe? And so there's a lot of work there when it comes to barriers. The next thing is do the work. I wish I could tell you that it's just going to happen for you, but it just does not happen that way. You have to do the work. You have to put your hand to the plow. But the good news is God said he'll bless the work of our hands. And so if you lean into that and you give him something to work with, there's a promise for you in there. But the key thing is there's no reason to bless anything that's not in motion. So you got to start doing something, make some effort towards what it is you're looking to accomplish. Mm-hmm. The fourth one is you got to take care of you. And the biggest aha, I was at a retreat this weekend, and the biggest aha that I got was that self-care is about receiving. And at your age, you may not get it. But if you keep living like my grandma used to tell me, just keep living, Denise, is what she would say to me, you'll begin to realize that you pour out a lot. And we often have relegated self-care to care of our nails and care of our toes. Mm-hmm. But self-care is really about you receiving help, receiving support for your money, support for your mind, support for your body, all of the things that are necessary to make you perform optimally is where self-care begins. Those are just the beginnings. And so if taking care of you is a perspective to lean into, you've got to think about how you're caring about you. And then the last one is to hold fast to your faith, because the reality is there's days of contradiction. We're hoping it'll go right and it goes left. We're hoping it'll go up and it goes down. We're hoping it'll be good and it's not. And in those days, you can't lose sight of hope. You can't lose sight of being able to hang in there through those moments and really begin to see yourself through the hard situations. And so those are the things that I would try to encourage you with. Mm-hmm. And those can be applied to any situation, any goal, any dream, any pursuit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. One of my form of like self-care that I started recently, aside from journaling, is I started doing like daily affirmations, because I just tell myself, even if something's small, like you can do it. I'm like, okay, I can do it. And I go and do what I need to do. Mm-hmm. So that's something I've been working on. And I'm just trying to like encourage myself and like just constantly just uplifting me, because sometimes I could beat myself down when I make little mistakes, and that's not good, because it's like, it's just a little mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. It's just all about learning from those mistakes. So yeah. Cool.
Well, that's all we have. Molly, if you want to join us back, we can begin the wrap up. You did an awesome job interviewing me, Missy.
Oh, yes, you did. You did, Zainab. You are such a brilliant young woman already. I can tell you're going to do great things. Just keep putting one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. You're going to do great. Denise, beautiful words of advice. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. I see why the power you bring receives such brilliant praise. So thank you so much to you both for joining us. We really appreciate you having been here. As a reminder, if you're interested in viewing this again, or if you didn't get to see it the first time, you can check this and our other presentations out at www.alumlc.org/MiamiOH. Thank you all for joining us. Love and honor to you. Have a great day, everyone.
All right.